why I'm here today is because I do yoga every day. And I don't do it lightly. I really do yoga every day. I mean, the things that you see on television or on YouTube about yoga, I'm doing that in the morning, probably before you're awake, before you have your coffee, my legs going behind my head and in places that you would never imagine your legs should really go. And I do that every day. And I've been doing it for 14 years. And over these 14 years, I've made trips to India to study with my teacher, Sri K. Pattabhi Joyce, and his grandson, Arsharat Joyce. And I've gone to India for between 1 month and 6 months every year. So there was a period of time where I actually was in India more than I was in the United States. And when I was here, my only real home was in my parents' garage. And that involved a yoga mat and lots of candles around the yoga mat to try to keep warm. And you know, the 3 days of winter we have in Florida, but you're supposed to sweat when you do yoga. And I wanted to sweat, so I had a lot of candles. Should have just bought a space heater. Too cheap, because I wanted to save all that money to get back to India. So after these 14 years of traveling to India, I have dedicated my life to the practice, the study, and the dissemination of the Ashtanga Yoga method. The Ashtanga Yoga method has led me to create 5 DVDs that are about this method, has led my husband and I to open the Miami Life Center, and led me to found the Miami Yoga magazine and KinoYoga. So I guess it's also made me an entrepreneur and a businesswoman, which I never would have imagined before I started yoga. Now, the practice of Ashtanga Yoga has led me, of course, to first and foremost be a student of yoga. So I'm constantly learning. I still do my practice every morning. And only once that firm foundation of being a student has been established, now can I even consider myself a beginning of a fledgling of a teacher. So when I went to India for the first time, I met my teachers. And this man had been teaching for maybe 65 years when I went there. And I was 23 years old and lost and confused in the world and in a country far away. You can imagine I'm an only child, and my parents were probably mortified that I had traveled, 25,000 miles to a country far away with, at that time, no internet, no telephone, no text message to say, hey, I landed. Just does anyone remember AOL when you had the dial-up internet connection? Those of you, we're aging ourselves now. There's a whole generation that will never have to deal with that. The internet cafes in India had one dial-up connection for all of the computers. And India has power cuts. Now, in the United States of America, we don't have power cuts. We have continuous power. If the power goes out, the government gives a warning. So you could be writing your email. Remember writing an email to my parents, oh, everything's wonderful here, and then the power went out. Email's gone. Completely have to start over. And you never know when the power's going to come back on. So this is the India that I went to, and I threw myself into the practice. And after 14 years of going back and forth to India, I've traveled over 500,000 miles in the service of Ashtanga Yoga, traveling to more than 50 different cities in more than 20 different countries. So you can hear I'm enthusiastic and passionate about the practice. So it's only natural that I wanted to write a book about the Ashtanga Yoga method. The book that I hope many of you will buy and read and get inspired to do the practice with tonight is not the book I wanted to write. I wanted to write my story, the story of going to India. Just no one really was interested in it. So that became my first book, which is Sacred Fire, which is a much smaller book than what you see tonight. And then I wanted it to be a yoga diet book to talk about all the yummy foods in India and all of the dietary changes that come with the practice of yoga. But again, no one was really interested in that. And that became my chapter on the yoga diet in the book that hopefully you'll check out tonight. And it was only when I finally found an agent and I finally found a publisher that was interested, and they asked me, please do a manual of Ashtanga Yoga. You know this so well. Please teach us that. So I said, okay, I'll write this book. And that began a 4-year journey of writing and rewriting the book that you'll see today. And I wrote the book 4 different times and then edited it a series of probably another 4 different times to produce the book called The Power of Ashtanga Yoga. And it was harder than any yoga posture I'd ever done and took more work than I ever possibly imagined. And I kind of feel like this is yoga itself. It starts off as one thing and ends up as something totally different. For any of you who are interested in yoga, your interest is probably coming from either fitness or perhaps weight loss. You are interested in the young-looking limber yoga body. And then if you practice yoga, you'll actually begin to experience health and healing, and that the body is given a new, sort of like a new lease on life, and that old wounds are healed, whether those are emotional wounds or they're actual physical wounds. And then finally, after decades of practice, you begin to experience what yoga really is, which is a journey towards inner peace, and a journey towards a whole lifestyle developed towards the establishment of real awakening. So more than anything else, the Ashtanga Yoga method is the ability to move beyond your limitations. Because if you believe that you are only a certain level of strength, or your leg will never go behind your head, then you believe in those limitations. So the power of Ashtanga Yoga is the power to break free of all of your limitations. Before I started the practice, I was weak. Weak to the extent that I didn't know that I could be strong. Not only did I not know that I didn't have core strength, but I didn't even know what it was. I just knew that I couldn't lift my butt off of the ground. I couldn't do a push-up. I couldn't do anything related to fitness. I would get winded, running around the block and get in an immediate bad mood when I had to run in any fashion. And it's really easy to get really sweaty in Florida, so that happened very quickly. Now, when I started practicing, there's this posture called the headstand. Has anyone seen a headstand? You heard about a headstand, seen it, tried it? Anyone tried it? So you know it's not so easy, right? Actually, I was so bad at the headstand that my first yoga teacher and people in the class around me came up to me and said, please, don't try. You do that so badly. It looks like your neck will break. Please, just sit this one out. It would be better if you didn't try. Can you imagine how bad that must have looked? Think about that. If you were to go and plead with someone, don't try because your neck will break. That was me. But my teacher, Sri K. Pattabhi Joyce, who I referred to as Guruji, he said, you have to try. You have to be stronger. So I did it. And after 10 months, more than 10 months of getting up, falling over, and trying again, getting up, falling over, and trying again, one day I balanced in a headstand. And so you think, so what? You balanced in a headstand. Yay for you. But for me, it was a life-changing moment. Because up until that moment, I was this girl who was weak, insecure, unsure of myself in the world, never in balance. My mind was always unsteady. And the moment that I balanced in the headstand, even if it was just for a few seconds, I began to experience the possibility of what a balanced life could possibly be. So for me, balancing in headstand opened up a doorway to be a better person, to be a more balanced and sane human being in the world. And I'm thankful for that journey ever since. Now, if you've never practiced Ashtanga Yoga and you begin to be inspired to take a class, you'll feel the benefits right away. You'll walk out of your first yoga class and you'll think, wow, I feel awesome. And then the next day you'll wake up and you'll hate yoga because you'll be so sore in places that you've never imagined being sore. For those of you that have tried yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, you'll know that the morning after, if you've never felt your hamstring muscles, those immediately turn on. I didn't know I had hamstring muscles until my first Ashtanga Yoga class. And I still remember getting out of bed and thinking, oh my God, how am I going to make it to the bathroom? I'm not going to be able to make it. My legs will not carry me. And then, they do. Very sore, but they manage. And slowly you begin to practice. And after 3 months of practice, you begin to see some of the tangible benefits. Your body starts changing. You get stronger. You begin to achieve postures you think were impossible. But the real benefits of the Ashtanga Yoga method comes after a lifetime of practice. You should measure your success in terms of decades, and also not in terms of posture, but in terms of how you feel. Do you feel happier? Do you feel more free? Is there more beauty in your life and in your heart? That's the measurements of the practice. My teacher always said, the Ashtanga Yoga practice, very difficult. Whole lifetime take practice. Only then some small benefit there. It's a humbling statement because we think, 3 months, that's a long time. 8 months, that's a long time. Actually, on my first journey to India, I mentioned I was 23 years old, and I was sort of sitting alone in India, and I thought, maybe many of you have taken a trip, you think, I'll take a holiday, and it'll be wonderful over there. And if you're doing yoga, there's this idealized view of India, India's historic past and the sages of India. So I went there thinking, I'm going to go there. I'm going to feel wonderful. And I got there, and I was still crazy me. So I sat in India, and with all of the things that were bothering me in the United States, and I sat there, and the biggest problem was I had no one else to blame. It was me and my stuff and my thoughts and the mirror of the yoga practice. And I couldn't blame my upbringing. I couldn't blame my culture. I couldn't blame the traffic. I couldn't blame the weather. I couldn't blame, the news or the government or any of these problems. I could only sit with me. So I brought me and my problems all the way to India, and it kind of drove me crazy. So I did the only thing that I thought I really could do. I went to my teacher, and I said to him, earnestly, a little bit crazy, but earnestly, Guruji, what should I do? I've been doing Ashtanga Yoga for 8 months, which I thought was a long time. It was my longest relationship at the time, so I was very proud of that 8 months, And I said, I don't understand. Where is this whole peace thing? Where is this enlightenment? Why do I not have it? Patient man took me seriously, and he leaned in and he said to me, with very clear, bright eyes, and his broken English with his Indian accent, he said, oh, you do 3 things. You do posture, looking, breathing. And then he sort of scowled and he said, long time. Then Shanti is coming. No problem. And he smiled, his warm, heart-filling smile. And Shanti means peace in English. And long time was his emphasis. So in this, he gave me the true essence of the practice. The power of Ashtanga Yoga is its humility, its methodology. My teacher didn't invent the practice. He received it from his teacher, and I received it from him. So I didn't invent anything. I'm sharing with you the essence of the practice, which is comprised of posture, which is known as the Asana Practice, which you'll find broken up into standing postures, back bends, seated postures, closing postures, and the sun salutations, in the primary series of Ashtanga Yoga, which is the foundational series out of 6 that brings health and healing into the body. So this is the posture. And what's great about posture is there's no lying, We're doing the posture. You're trying to put your leg behind your head, or you're not. It's not something you can theorize. It's not something you can imagine. You're doing it or you're not doing it. Then when you're in the posture, you're not just meant to think about what you're having for lunch or what cool clothes the yogi next to you is wearing, but instead, you're meant to focus on the drishti, which is a Sanskrit word for a specific gazing point. This has the faculty of training your mind, so you can be singular and focused in a point of attention. And then the third component of the Ashtanga method is the breath. If you control your breath, you will control your nervous system. You'll notice how important the breath is if you just think about the last time any of you have seen a horror movie, if you've seen that in a movie theater. Collectively, at that moment when the music comes on and you know that, the monster's going to come out, the whole theater will all hold our breath. And then only when it releases, when we know what's going to happen, do we exhale. So our nervous system is intimately tied to our inhalation and our exhalation. And by controlling the breath, we control our nervous system, we tame the emotions, and train the mind, giving us an access point into relaxation, peace, and ease. This is called the Tristana method of Ashtanga Yoga, which literally means the 3 prongs of practice. And every time you do the practice, these 3 elements are there. I called this book The Power of Ashtanga Yoga because through the vehicle of the practice, what you really experience is your own power. So there's nothing external. No one's giving you anything except a method for you to experience your own power. It's not external. So the power of Ashtanga Yoga is the power to transform your body, to move your mind into a state of unity and clarity. The power of Ashtanga Yoga, more than anything else, is the strength and steadiness it takes to stay the course of whatever you set your mind on from its beginning until its end. My journey has been so much about strength because I started off with so much weakness. And I had no idea that yoga was so much about both strength and steadiness of the body and strength and steadiness of the mind. Every time I went to India and I thought, hey, I'm pretty good at the practice right now, the first thing that my teachers would say to me was, Kino, you have to be stronger. And sometimes I wanted to break, and sometimes I wanted to cry, and sometimes I did cry. But they never backed off. They never said, oh, well, just forget about it. They just said it again. Kino, you have to be stronger. And when I started teaching, I remembered their words because I didn't meet the world, especially in the yoga world, with a lot of positivity in the beginning. Actually, there were a lot of people that weren't really supportive of my teaching. people would write, funny, I can say funny now, but I didn't really think it was funny at the time, negative blogs complaining about the color of my hair, what I would wear to practice, the size of my shorts, the shape of my legs, how fast I speak, my American accent, and all sorts of things, what right I had to do the practice. If I hadn't been doing yoga, I would have quit right then. But because I heard my teacher say, Kino, you have to be stronger, I asked myself, how strong do you need to be? You need to be strong enough to believe in your dreams, even if you're the only one left who believes in your dreams. Even if everyone else laughs at you and ridicules you, the power of Ashtanga Yoga is the power to believe in your dreams, and not just to think about them, but to take action, to make them real in the world. And the headstands and the handstands and the postures that we use are merely vehicles for you to experience that depth of determination, that depth of power and presence that you can actualize in your life. The power of Ashtanga Yoga, perhaps more than anything else, is the ability to stay the course through your life in your greatest moments of darkness, so you can experience the dawning of your own dreams one day. The power of Ashtanga Yoga is the ability to rewrite the story of your own life after decades of disillusionment and disappointment into a story filled with hope and dreams and possibility. You have that power sitting inside yourself. You have the power and the strength to realize and dream anything, because the human potential has no limits, and the Ashtanga Yoga practice is a vehicle for you to experience that. The power of Ashtanga Yoga is also the power to experience the present moment, to experience reality and the perfection of reality as it is right now, to drop in and realize that everything is perfect, just as it is, that you are a truly limitless being, and that through the vehicle of the practice, all you have to do to experience the paradise or the heaven that we're seeking externally, the goals that we think will give us peace, all we have to do to experience that is to drop into the reality of now. Be with it, relax and breathe, and then the paradise is right here in the magic of the practice. So I hope you'll be inspired to practice, and I hope you'll be inspired to read my book as well. And do we have any questions about the practice? I didn't really tell you what the practice was, so that's often a question. Yeah?
I have, maybe it's kind of a silly question, but I'm wondering, you were half a world away from this man who was many, many years older than you.
Yeah.
You were just getting started. How did you arrange your initial meeting? How did it happen?
That's a really good question. So this is sort of it's a very, very funny story. I was in New York City, and I was in graduate school thinking I would start my life. My parents were probably very happy. I finally, got out of partying on South Beach, and I went and I got into a graduate school, and then what do? The first time I call home, I said, I want to go to India, and I said, well, how are you going to do this? And what happened was the yoga studio where I was practicing in New York, there were people who were going to India. And I just remember one day after, we sing an opening mantra where we ask to be let into the spiritual lineage of yoga. And I remember one day the teacher said, I just want to wish these two students, a really good trip to India. And my heart just went, oh, I got to do that too. I don't know what that's about, but I got to do that. So I went and asked, what's going on? He said, oh, my teacher is in India, and you can go meet him. So I said the same thing. How do I arrange a meeting? Do I make a booking? And where am I going to stay? I want the Travelocity experience. I want to book the flight and the hotel for the package deal with a car that's going to pick me up and a little sign with my name on it. Nothing like that. He said, you write a letter to this address talking about when you want to come, and it was the strangest address. Shri K. Patabi Joyce, Ashtanga Yoga Vidwan, Ashtanga Yoga Nilayam. What does that mean? No idea, right? All these words I'd never heard of. And then the address is what was really horrible. 4th Cross, 3rd Stage, Old Number 3, Mysore, 57002, India. And I thought, oh God, this is not an address. This is something weird. I have no idea but I wrote it down on the outside, and I put it on FedEx because I thought, this has got to get there. And then the instructions were, if you don't hear back, then you can go. very reassuring. Then you can buy a $2,000 airplane ticket and sit on an airplane for 24 hours and arrive in a country where you know absolutely no one and nothing. And then that's only going to get me to Bangalore, which is not Mysore. Bangalore it's an international airport, but Mysore has no airport. And it's a 4-hour taxi ride away from Bangalore. So you have to arrive to this city, which you arrive at 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. and then take a taxi over, 4-hour taxi in the middle of the night. And it's not like a road. It's not like I-95. You know, if you've ever been on a country road, the experience of that taxi was more like a country road. There were cows that would come out of nowhere, and then the driver had to swerve around the cows, and then there were herds of goats that would sort of run through, and then people in India beep. Not like we beep. You know, we beep when we're mad. You know, someone cuts us off, and then we beep. In India, people beep like, "Hi, I'm coming by, beep beep." And so the 4 hours of cars beeping at each other, just letting them know they're there. And then I arrived in Mysore, and I didn't even know the taxi driver was, "Oh, you're here." I'm here. You know, and I gave him the address, and I came with this giant backpack that was bigger than I was, and I jumped out of the car, and I saw Ashtanga Yoga Nilayam, and it said old number 11. And I thought, "Oh, I'm here." You know, and I dropped my bag and I walked out, and here was Patanjali Joyce, and he was standing there. And the first thing he said to me was, "You wrote letter?" I wrote the letter. And then he smiled and he said, "Tomorrow's 6 a.m. And then I started the practice. So it was a leap of faith, to be honest with you. I mean, now it's much easier. My teacher passed away, and his grandson is now running the Ashtanga Yoga Institute in India. And he's from a different generation, so now there's an online application. So it's much nicer now. So many more people are going now. You know, when I went, there were 40 students, and now it's very, very comforting to get the confirmation email. Very comforting. Didn't exist, you know. There is actually one other funny story about my first trip to India. My parents will appreciate this. One of the first things I wanted to do was call home. I've arrived. You know, like, I'm not dead. I've arrived. Your only child survives. So here I am. I put my stuff down at my friend's apartment, and I'm trying to scramble and find a place to live. And I've booked a night in this. My friends booked me a night in this strange hotel that doesn't have running hot water, but a nice Indian boy will bring me hot water at any time in large buckets. So I thought, I need to find another place to live. And the first thing I did, where's a telephone booth? Where's a phone booth? So I'm wandering around, where's a phone booth? Where's a phone booth? And then someone, I asked in India, "You know where I can call USA?" Then finally someone points, and they point at a giant yellow booth that has the letters STD written on it. And I thought, no, I don't have one of those. I don't want to go in there. I don't want one, and I don't have one. And I'm not going into a small, sweaty booth in the middle of India with STD written on it. Oh, a telephone. And I walked in there, and there was a phone. And I walked into the STD booth, and I called home. And the whole time, I just felt like, I better go home and wash everything properly, you know. But I still don't know what the letters stand for, but to this day, you can walk into an STD booth in India, and you can call any country and any telephone number in the world, and it's really just a telephone booth, you know. Extremely funny. I've learned so much from traveling back and forth to India. It was probably one of the most expansion of consciousness that I've ever gone through, because it's such a different culture. And it's the first time I came back to the United States, I appreciated everything in such a new way. I feel like up until that moment, I grew up taking everything for granted, you know, electricity and air conditioning and running hot water and all of these things. And my first trip back to the United States, it was as though I was newly born. I looked at it with new eyes, and it was just this brand new appreciation. And it was probably my first experience of really being present with my surroundings. Because up until then, you know, I'd just taken everything for granted. It was just, hey, you know, I'm here, this is what I do. But that moment when I came back, I was changed. And, you know, I started teaching. I never hatched the idea, I'm going to be a yoga teacher. That was never an idea, actually, that planted in my mind. After my first trip to India, I came back and I was working as a journalist, and I was trying to complete my master's degree program at New York University. And I remember the first meeting I had was with my thesis advisor. I'm going to get this thesis done. That's sort of what was my mission. And I start talking with my thesis advisor about what I'm going to write my thesis on, and you know, I had produced these books and this research that I wanted to do. And he stopped me halfway through and he said, "What did you do over the summer? Something's different." And I looked at, "Oh, nothing. I just want to write my thesis, you know." And then, "No, what did you do?" And I started talking. Well, I went to India and I met this man, Sri Patanjali Joyce, and I spent 2 months there studying the method of Ashtanga Yoga. And then he smiled and he said, "That's it. I want to do that. Come to my house and teach me." I'm not a teacher. And I started to try to refer. Please go and study with this teacher. They're so much more qualified than I am. Please go and study here. They're so much more. No, I want to take your class. I don't teach. And finally, it happened to me so often, I would get a massage. Oh, wonderful and relaxing. At the end of the massage, the therapist would say, "What do? You do something." I'm a graduate student. No, what do you do? "Well, I do this Ashtanga Yoga." "Oh, that's great. Do you want to trade and you teach me and then I'll give you massages?" I'm not really a teacher, but I don't really want to pass up a free massage. So I started teaching like that. People asked me, and I tried to send them other places. And when they said no, I said, "Okay, I'll share with you what I know, but I'm not a teacher. I'm just a student." And in many ways, I still kind of feel like that.
It's interesting in here you talk about your like food choices being an expression of how you approach life. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Now, in my book, what I talk about in relationship to the yoga diet is this concept in Sanskrit, which is called ahimsa, and that literally means nonviolence. Right? And this is perhaps the most fundamental principle of yoga, which is to at the very least not cause harm in the world. If we can't be positive, if we can't be a force of peace and healing, the very least that we can do is live in accordance with ahimsa, which is nonviolence. And there's a belief in the philosophical foundations of yoga that all sentient beings have feelings and are alive and have a soul. So that that when we harm other beings, we are creating violence against them. And if we make them suffer, then we are being violent towards them. So the idea of the yoga diet is first and foremost a diet that creates the least amount of harm in the world. And for me, I grew up loving animals. My dad used to breed Dobermans, and so I have these memories of these little puppies, making little puppy noises. And if anyone's ever had puppies, they have a particular smell, like a puppy smell, which is it's very cozy. And if you've had animals, I love animals and I love cats. And after my first trip to India, I realized, cows, they're large dogs. They have those same eyes. And there was, in fact, a very large cow that I saw once in India that every day around 4 o'clock would go stand in front of a house and the cow would moo. And it would moo. Like dogs cry when they're hungry or cats cry. It was that, like, "Give me food." And then there would be a lady that would come out with a pot of rice and like leftovers and put it down. And the cow would eat and then it would go away. "Oh, this is a dog. It's a tank, but it's a dog." And I thought, how can we kill our dogs? This is a creature. This has feelings. The more time I spent in India, the more I experienced because their animals are everywhere. We don't have cows running around our streets. I've never seen a cow before I went to India. I was scared of it. It's a tank. It's huge, And I'd seen hamburger, but I'd never seen a cow. I'd seen a steak, but I'd never seen a cow. I'd never looked into the eyes of a cow. And after I saw that, it affected me, and it made me realize these are beings. They feel. There was one time when we were staying in India, my husband and I, and there was a pack of pigs. They're ugly. I don't like pigs, but I'll just say that. Even seeing them. But there was a mama pig and a dad pig, and a lot of little piglets. They would all run around together. Then one night, I heard this scream, like a pig scream. And then the next morning, the mama pig and the little babies had no father. And they were upset. They were running around like crazy. And the squeals that came from the middle of the night, and I thought, they have suffered. They're mourning for the loss of their dad. And that wasn't fun for him to die. And I just felt like I cannot participate in this. So for the yoga diet, more than anything else, is about that ethical principle to not do harm to other beings. Unless you, of course, are are stranded in the Arctic tundra and there's nothing else to eat, and you have to, for your own, you can protect yourself, you can, in that way, sustain yourself. But if you have no medical reason, no financial reason to take the life of another being, the principles of yoga are that you do not harm other beings. And in that very small way, we leave less of a footprint on the world. And then we live a lifestyle that's more spiritually oriented. So this concept of ahimsa, it affects like nonviolence. It affects choices in food. It affects choices in consumerism. It affects how we inhabit the space around us. It affects our communication. It affects our relationships. It ideally makes us, better mothers, better daughters, better wives, better people in the world, so that we communicate nonviolently. And in the yoga practice, we have this concept of embodying peace, so that it's often said that a real yogi will leave the world a more peaceful place than when they entered it. And so we try to as more people are practicing yoga, we try to see the arc of society actually transforming to be a more peaceful society. And the diet is really just one part of that whole foundation, The other side of that, though, is we don't want to be an angry vegetarian, right? So you don't want to beat people over the head and be like, you're eating steak, and then attack them. The idea is to be nonviolent, and I would say first and foremost with the people around you, and then what you choose to put into your own body has to make moral and ethical sense for yourself. I have one other funny story about that. There is a student of mine who's joined some trainings and workshops with me, and he's a congressman. And he's a congressman for a very, very conservative southern state, and I won't say which state, but you can take your pick. Now, he came to my class, and I said, I'm a congressman, and I already had preconceived notions of which side of the political aisle he would be, and he was on the extremely conservative political side. I thought, wow, and he came up to me and said, I just want to tell you, this has changed my life, and 6 months ago I became vegetarian, and wow, this is amazing. So why did you become vegetarian? And I'm ready for the ahimsa and all of my reasonings. And he said, one day I woke up, and he was southern, so he had this southern drawl. And one day I woke up and I twisted to the right, and I got tired of feeling that hamburger in the way. And then he said when he stopped eating meat, he felt lighter. So then I put in a carrot, I twist to the right, it doesn't get in the way. And so it's as simple as that the body's lighter when you put vegetarian food in it as well. And he experienced that there was no morality in it. It was the simple function of, I want to twist to the right, and all that meat is in the way.
Yeah. Does that seem like there's an explosion of people that are interested in yoga all of a sudden?
I really hope there is. Yeah. I really hope there is an explosion of people interested in yoga. And since I travel the world, I can say that it's not just an American phenomenon. It's truly a global phenomenon. And what's beautiful about yoga is its universality. It's, you can see the honesty of people in their movement. There's no... we can talk and we can say, I feel good, I feel fine. How many times have we done that? How are you doing today? I'm fine, I'm good. And inside you're dying, or you're in pain, or you just don't want to talk about it with that person. But you unroll your yoga mat and your yoga teacher sees you for who you are. You share yourself honestly. And it doesn't matter if you don't speak the language. I've been to Japan where very few people speak English, and to Taiwan where no one speaks English. And I can communicate through the vehicle of yoga with these different traditions and see the people practicing in their nakedness, in their openness, and in their sincerity. And I'm really excited. It's a dream of mine that the whole world practices yoga. If I can do anything to further that, I'm deeply honored. That's a really good question. First of all of this spiritual lineage of yoga can be traced back to what's called Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And this is a spiritual document that was comprised more than 2,000 years ago. And this outlines the inner path of what happens when we embark on the spiritual practice of yoga. So all styles of yoga have at their end result the experience of that limitless self within. And then what we're talking about is different styles, different flavors, you could say. So if we were to use analogy of going to an ice cream store, and everything is ice cream, and then there are different flavors, but all of the ice cream has the same desire to make you, give you a yummy experience and to be sugary and sweet and fill you with a sense of happiness, right? So the different styles of yoga have different methodologies. The Ashtanga Yoga method is distinguished by the use of postures and a daily practice and a daily discipline to first work on the physical body. So first you develop a physical practice that you do every day. You sweat profusely to remove toxins and impurities of the body, and then slowly, these postures begin to open doorways into emotional realizations, psychological realizations, and then one day spiritual realizations. So the Ashtanga Yoga method is a very physical style of yoga in the beginning that evolves into a spiritual practice. So we start with what's real and tangible and move more and more subtle from there. Whereas some other styles of yoga approach things, from different perspectives. Like I'm most versed in the Ashtanga method, but I would say that's its single distinguishing feature, that it starts with the physical practice and moves inward. The second distinguishing feature in the Ashtanga method is that the Ashtanga method relies on an internal fire or heat. There's no external heat. First of all, in Miami, I always wonder why we would want to put the heater on. I'm always turning the air conditioning down and making it cooler. So the idea of entering a heated room and sweating it just never works for me here. I could understand, in the north of Canada. But even in Canada, if you're, negative 40 degrees, the Ashtanga method would only heat the room to be comfortable, like the temperature that it is now. And then the heat is developed first internally. And we have this word in Sanskrit called Agni, which literally means fire. And that fire is meant to be cultivated deep within our body. And that fire lives in the power center inside of our pelvis. So we cultivate that. We awaken the fire inside of our pelvis. And then slowly, that fire transforms as it purifies the body, then it purifies the mind, it purifies the emotions. And one day, the fire of purification begins to be the light or the dawning of our own awakening. So it begins to be the light or the lamp of knowledge. And this is one of the most distinguishing philosophical principles of the Ashtanga practice, that through developing the fire of purification, we can then see reality more clearly and shine and burn more brightly. And this is said and is documented in the Yoga Sutras as creating a body that glows with inner light after many years of practice.
How long do you spend doing the Ashtanga Yoga every day?
My practice varies between 1 and 2 hours every day. At the height of my practice, when I was, and I might go there again, but in India, when I've been doing very, very intensive practice, it's been about more than 3 hours. So it was very long, and there were no breaks. So sometimes if you exercise or something, you take a little bit break. In the Ashtanga method, there was a break only at the end of the 3 hours. So it would start, and 3 hours would go by, and then other people would come and they would do their whole practice next to me, and then they'd leave. And I was there from 5 a.m. until 8 a.m. almost every day for one period of 6 months. And it was very, very intense. But now that I've gone through that, I've been through that fire, now I'm only doing, an hour to 2 hours every day.
Are you doing the same routine every day?
That's a really good question. The Ashtanga Yoga method is broken up into 6 series. So my book, The Power of Ashtanga Yoga, contains the primary series. This is the foundational principle of the practice, and it's the most accessible. So if you're a beginner, it's the perfect place to start. And if you're already having an established practice, it will deepen your established practice. So my practice now, out of the 6 series, I practice 4. In the world, there's only one person who practices all 6 series, and that's my teacher's grandson, Arsharat Joyce. And I've seen some postures in the 5th series, and maybe I'll learn them next time, but they're so scary so that I don't know whether to be excited or terrified about the possibility of learning them. And no one has seen any of the postures in the 6th series. It's the mythical legend of the Ashtanga practice. Does it exist? Is it levitation? Do we disappear? You know, we don't know. I mean, if as soon as I see or experience any of those postures, I will definitely write about it, but I am just as curious as everyone. Yeah. So in my daily practice, I will do the primary series once a week, the second series, which is not contained in this book, also once a week, the third series once a week, and then the fourth series, which is the one that I'm working the most on, about 3 times a week. So I'm doing something different, you know, but for a long time I was doing something the same every day. My first year of practice, I only did the same thing every day. And then the principle behind that is that you want to master where you are before you move on. And I don't know if you've been to yoga classes where, you know, you give it your best try and then you move on. Or you do it like this and you move on. And then we get really, you know, we get interested in advanced things. We want to be advanced. We want to be cool. We want to get there. The Ashtanga method is probably the exact opposite of that. It says, you know, how can you get there when you aren't here? And it asks you, again, to be present. Do what you do well before you even think about moving on. And then in this way, we build the foundations of a healthy, aligned body, and we let the postures heal the body, rather than just doing, you know, a bunch of random postures. We really take our time. So if there's a posture in the primary series, which is contained within this book, what I've given as instruction is to stop there, do not proceed on, stay there for a few months, or weeks, or days, depending on how long it takes for you to master that, and really master it. Let it integrate. And only when you feel comfortable and you can breathe and the body is open, then you move on. And this is how I've learned the method, you know. My teacher would never let me move on until I had learned the posture he taught me. And he made me do whatever that was every day until I was ready to move on. And this is why the practice transforms you, because you're asked to stay. So there are often postures that, you know, like for me, headstand. So I tried headstand every day for more than 10 months. And if I would have just skipped over it or moved on, I would have never learned it. And there are all sorts of postures like that. Backbending postures, twisting postures that people spend, you know, one week, 1 month. I know someone that took 5 years to learn one posture, and they stayed with it for that long. There are postures that I've been working on for 10 years that I haven't gotten, and I keep trying every single day. So maybe, by the end of this lifetime.
So you're saying you can still keep working on a posture, but you can move on
Yeah.
the next series.
Yeah, you can keep working on the postures I'm working on are at the very end of what I'm doing, and you can. It's interesting. You reach a certain level of proficiency on a posture, and then you can move on to the next one. But you'll always be, you know, developing the practice and going deeper. And what might be, you know, okay one day, then you can go a little bit deeper. And as you begin to progress, you'll see there are many different levels of the posture. So you never really arrive. Even the basis of the practice comes in what's called the sun salutations. And those I do every single day, regardless of what series I'm doing. And these postures seem simple. You know, there are 9 movements in the first sun salutation. And even now, after 14 years of practice, I still am striving to perfect that movement. There are still things in there that I'm looking to get better at, to try at, to combine, you know, the breath and the movement. In the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is the philosophical basis of the spiritual lineage of Ashtanga Yoga. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, it states that the true mastery of the asana, the practice, the physical posture, is when your body is 100% relaxed and your mind is able, in the midst of the intensity of the posture, to meditate on the infinite. So I'm still working on that one. You know. Maybe my whole lifetime, the last practice. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you very much.